record this webinar. And so what that means is you might see something on your screen that says recording. Most definitely, I am not recording you. I am recording myself, and I can happily send this recording to anybody afterwards if they want to pass along this webinar to your coworkers, for example. So we'll go ahead and get started. Again, if you have any questions, use that Q&A feature, and then Sean will be able to answer. But thanks everyone for joining. Right now what we're looking at is our dashboard. And so our dashboard is a quick snapshot of what's going on with all of our work orders. For example, I have these 4 colored boxes at the very top of the page. And if I were to hit this teal box that says I have 22 work orders that are in progress, I can click that, and then I'll get a filter out where I'll see all those work orders then. And then we have this great pinwheel. I can see from the past week the statuses of my work orders. We have 10 different status options in PM Toolbelt, so realistically this pinwheel could have 10 different colors. On the right-hand side, I do have tasks, and there's 2 purposes with tasks. First is that it's a really great office management tool. If you have coworkers and you want to make sure that they call somebody, replace anything, etc., you can assign them a task, and then you can assign yourself as a watcher. So then this task will stay on your dashboard as well. The other purpose of tasks is to associate them with work orders, and I'll make sure to touch base on that later on. And then when I scroll down more, we have our real-time feed, which is giving you updates about your technicians that are in the field and what status they're at with their work orders, as well as their last GPS location. And we know this because the method says phone app. And at the very bottom, you can quickly filter out if you want to see scheduled work orders. So that's just our dashboard. If you follow my mouse on the left-hand side underneath the Home tab, here's where we have everything organized. Now, I forgot to mention in the beginning, we do integrate with QuickBooks Online and Rent Manager 12. If you are a Rent Manager customer, we will sync over and bring over all those properties, units, tenants, etc. So as long as you update all that information in Rent Manager, we will update it in PM Toolbelt for you. We have some really great reporting features, which I'm going to touch base on actually towards the end of the webinar. And then the last thing I want to point out on the Home tab is our surveys. So a really common thing that I hear from customers all over at conferences and when I'm doing one-on-ones is that there's no follow-up. So one of the easiest ways to have follow-up is to set up a survey. This would automatically be sent out to the tenant at the completion of the work order, which is another outlet for the tenant, right? Instead of them emailing you and calling you saying that the work wasn't done or they called about a different issue and they fixed something else, you can at least have another way for the tenant to send this communication to you. And so if the tenant were to respond to the survey, it would be logged right here in our Surveys tab. But moving on to what we care about the most is Maintain. And here's where we have everything organized with work orders, estimates, invoicing, etc. But I'm going to go ahead and go into my work orders. So right now I have everything organized with my most recent work order at the top of the page. And we can all see I have a quick description of what's going on with my work orders. I have my properties and units, my categories, severity, and dates when things were created, when they're due, etc. What everybody saw first was probably the statuses are color-coded. Again, this is a visual thing for you. If you're seeing that the majority of your work orders on the first page have the status of new and they're going to be green, then okay, well then I need to quickly schedule those out to take care of them. We do have a bunch of different filtering options. You can always filter out by who created the work order. Maybe you need to search by a certain status or a certain severity level. You can use that in our system. And then at the top of the page are 2 types of work orders. You can do a recurring work order in our system. And that essentially is anything that's an instance that requires more than one time, so like lawn care, landscaping, maybe checking air filters. In Minnesota, typically we install AC units in May and then remove them in October. Of course, depending on where you live, that may or may not be an issue for you. And then what you can do is you can automatically schedule it out if you want to your in-house maintenance team to make sure that Mark does this landscaping Mondays and Thursdays at 9 a.m., for example. And then that'll show up on his schedule as well. But what we care about most is creating a work order. So you can create a work order in our system, and I'm going to make sure I show you how that looks. It's very easy. One of the best things about our software is how user-friendly our software is. We do, as a side note, have a Tenant Portal plugin, and that's something we provide complimentary. We make sure the colors match your website, etc. And the tenant would submit a maintenance request through the Tenant Portal plugin. And we ask for a lot of information. We ask for any photos. We ask for consent. And then once the tenant submits that maintenance request, either all property managers would be notified or only one property manager if you set up property groups in our system. And then when the work order, or excuse me, when the maintenance request is submitted, it shows up at the top of our page with the status of new instead. So then you know where it came from and that you still need to schedule this out. But right now, I'm going to go ahead and create a one-time work order. So anything with asterisks is always required. I'll go ahead and choose the due date. Here's where I'm going to choose the property. If there was a unit, you would go ahead and select the corresponding unit. I can see that I have a maintenance limit for this property of $350. That's a great way for you to know, okay, if I'm worried it's going to cost more than this amount, then if I scroll down, I'll see that I can get approval, or I can create an estimate, or I can schedule out this work order. I also have a note that the house was built before 1978, and so I may need to be concerned about lead paint. And if there was additional property notes that you had, maybe about access method or about the basement, then you could go ahead and put that in for the property information as well, and then that'll populate. Otherwise, moving on, I would go ahead and select the type as work order. As I said, though, we also do inspections. You can choose the work order category. You can be something specific if you want, plumbing, HVAC, electrical, or maybe you just want to do general maintenance. If you want to assign this work order to anybody, you can easily do that to make sure they take care of the work order. Now the title. The title is a short description of what's going on with the work order. So I like to do an extreme scenario. Let's go ahead and say there was a thunderstorm last night and a tree branch fell and broke a window. So we need to replace the window. The areas where it is on the property, if you want to say the master bedroom, if it was the downstairs, if it was in the basement maybe, you can specify that. Reference number, any additional way you may want to track the work order besides our 6-digit number system. Severity level, if we recommend a time frame with these, but again, it's another way for your technicians or your contractors to know of how much of a priority this work order is. So if it's critical, we usually say that's something that needs to be done the day of no matter what. Whereas low, for example, needs to be done within a week. Service types, this is a new feature that we have. So we recently launched a call center, and the call center can be after hours or 24 hours. If that's something that you're interested in learning more about, then most definitely reach out to us. And then what the call center will do is they would use preferred vendors and vendor skills. And so you can specify this by property or by owner. And then what you can do, you can associate skill sets with them. So if you're scheduling out a work order to this property and it's electrical related, then you can go ahead and indicate that. And then we'll give you a list of the preferred vendors, and we'll even say, okay, of these preferred vendors, these ones have the skill sets that you need for this particular work order. But moving on, the description is a more thorough explanation of what's going on with the work order. So from here, I would say something like the tenant called, and because of the thunderstorm last night, a branch fell and broke the window. Chargebacks, any dollar amount you may want to charge back to the tenant. Technician notes aren't required, but I always recommend it. This is anything the technician or contractor needs to know about the property. So only they are going to see these notes. The tenant will never see this information. The owner will never see this information. So maybe you want to warn them about the tenant. They have a prickly personality. They're a very skittish person, or it's about animals on the property. I'll say the dog might try to bite. Then same thing with owner notes. Only the owner will ever see what you put here. You can attach any photos as a reference point. Scrolling back up on the right-hand side, we have tasks. So here's where you can make sure your technicians are doing that extra work. And you can also send out these additional tasks to contractors. Typically, this is small stuff you want them to do on the property, like changing a light bulb or checking batteries, checking air filters, etc., that you may not necessarily charge the owner for by itself. And we'll see what the tasks look like on the mobile app to make sure that they're doing all the work. Let's go ahead and add another one to change the light bulb in the hallway. Then we have related work orders. Right now I'm showing the 5 most recent related work orders for this property. If the work order is already created, then you would see that right here, and then you know not to create a duplicate. For the more likely scenario, if you're noticing a pattern going on with the property, then something else needs to be done. Or maybe it's a tenant calling in repeatedly about something that was already fixed. Now at the very bottom, we have notify contacts. This is most definitely the meat of our product. Here's where we automate all that communication. Here's where you can eliminate that process of trying to call and text and email people, trying to get status updates on work orders. So this is the first step. Let's say I would want to notify my coworker Zach that I'm creating this work order, and I want to notify the owner. Maybe I'm not going to notify the tenant quite yet that I'm creating it, because I'll have an option later on to notify when I'm scheduling. So right now that I've checked these 2 people, they're going to be notified throughout the entire process, when the work order was scheduled, when the work order was completed, and any follow-up needed with it. So I'm going to go ahead and scroll down, and I'm going to hit save just so everybody sees what this looks like in our system. But you saw that there was a schedule button as well, and then you could schedule the work order right there. So you saw a smart alert pop up showing you that a work order was created. And then we have our real-time feed. So I can see communication was sent out just now for this particular work order. And I can even see when the work order is created. This is going to be another great way to track your maintenance guys. Anytime they do a status update, anytime they clock in, anytime they add notes, anytime they add photos, anytime they go material shopping, we're tracking that in our system. And you'll get updates on that in our real-time feed. And then what you could do is you could click the work order number to get more context of what's going on. Because if they need to purchase a material, but you thought this was a pretty cut and dry work order, you can get more context and then maybe reach out to the technicians themselves to find out what exactly they're purchasing. But what we care about right now is this work order right here at the top with the status of new. And I'm going to go ahead and go into this work order. I have all my work order information. I have a financial breakdown, which will be really great later on for my technician who uses the mobile app. This information should all look familiar, the work order information. Now you can send out text from within our system. So if I wanted to check somebody's name and send a text message, they'll receive the text just like a normal text, and then they can even respond to that text. And if they were to respond, you get a smart alert box, which was that blue box that popped up. And then it also shows up here in the real-time feed. And we log in on our history log for our work orders and the communication with the tenants, because we want to keep track of all that information. If a tenant is saying, you said this or he said that, but then I said this, you can look into the history log. You can find out what exactly is going on with this work order, what truthfully happened, so you can back up whose ever claim they're trying to make. Now here we have those tasks again that I created when I created the work order. You can add any materials, but this is typically when the maintenance technician adds them on his mobile app. We have those related work orders again. And here's that communication log. Right now, as I said, I just notified people when the work order is created, but we're going to see later on this is going to have a lot more detail to it. Scrolling back up at the top, I'm going to go ahead and hit schedule, or on the left-hand side underneath maintain, I can go into schedules and go into the scheduler. And so what this means is I can pull up my maintenance team, or you can go into the work order and schedule and then pull up your contractors. And so what I'm seeing right now is I can see all my new work orders, and I can filter out with a radius. If I want to see an X amount of work orders that are, say, 5 miles from my Ruby Fireside Homes property, we're going to filter that out for you so you will only see those work orders. And then what you would go ahead and do is you would drag and drop to the person that you would like to schedule to. And actually, before I forget, let me quickly show you what it looks like for an outside vendor. So we have our preferred vendors right here, and we can see preferred by property and has required skills. If I were to select the custodial arts, this is an outside vendor. And so here's where you'd notify everyone that you're scheduling out this work order to the outside vendor. And essentially what we do is we send an email or a text to the outside vendor. We don't have the outside vendor have a login or an app, anything like that, because we found contractors don't want that extra work and essentially being told how to do their jobs. So that's why we make it easy for them with just an email or text, and we provide them the work order information. If they prefer text, then it's a simple reply 2 to approve, reply 8 to deny. And then when you send an email, it's essentially the same information, but much more content. And then they confirm or deny. When they confirm the work order, we ask them to schedule the work order. And then once they schedule that work order, all that notifications are sent out saying that the contractor scheduled the work order on this day at this time, making it much easier for everyone to know what's going on. And once the work order is completed, we send them a thank you email asking the contractor to upload their invoice, upload any photos, notes, etc., which are then automatically uploaded into PM Toolbelt. So here's a really great example if you're considering purchasing a new software of why you may want to use us, because typically people get really sick and tired of trying to call, of trying to follow up, knowing what's going on with the work order. Why haven't they responded to this? Why haven't they responded to that? We automate a lot of that communication for you so you can focus your time on other things. And that's essentially how it works for an outside vendor. As I mentioned before, if you want more thorough explanation of how that looks, then you can reach out to us at a separate time and we can delve more into how that looks. But otherwise, I'll go ahead and select my in-house maintenance team. Idigo Smith is usually my go-to guy. I can see that he's already working today. He has a scheduled work order. But I'm going to select my work order and then drag and drop to the time and technician. We do support scheduling to multiple technicians. If you think this is going to take multiple people, you can easily schedule that out. The start and end time, we default to a 2-hour time frame. So if you needed to change the time, you just make sure to hit the clock and change it to an hour, for example. Now the access method. You can indicate a lockbox or a key or tenant present or none. So for example, if I say the tenant's present, I would have the option to select the tenant or multiple tenants if there's more than one tenant on the property. I can indicate whether or not there's tenant consent and any additional details about the access method. Maybe we need to call the tenant an hour before arriving. Now when I scroll down more, here's maybe I want to notify the tenant, okay, don't worry, I'm scheduling out this work order right now. So my coworker, Zach, the property manager, Jan, and the owner, and the maintenance technician are going to be notified that I'm scheduling out this work order. So we're taking care of that for you. Typically, this communication is email or text for a lot of these users. For the maintenance technician, this is usually the phone app because that's what he uses to log in. So I'm going to go ahead and bring over my mobile app and show you what this looks like for the maintenance technician. I can see you got a notification, just like you would if you had an Instagram, Facebook account. So I'm going to close out of that real quick. I'm going to refresh my Today tab. Now I see I have 2 work orders scheduled for today, and I can see my 7:30 work orders listed first. And then I have my 10 a.m. work order right there as well. Before we go into the work order, just a quick introduction of our mobile app. If I go all the way to the right-hand side to time, here's where I can clock in and clock out. And this is when we start looking into the technician's times. Here's where you can start knowing everything that your technicians do basically. So, for example, if he clocks in at 9 a.m., but he doesn't start a work order until 10 a.m., what on earth was he doing during that time period of an hour? Was he in the office trying to get some keys? Or maybe he was making a quick stop over to McDonald's because he wanted to get some breakfast. Here's where we start that analyzing for you that we can pull reports later on. I also have a list of all my properties. I have a list of my owners and tenants, etc., within the properties as well. One of the best things about our mobile app is it's not just for technicians. Anybody could realistically use our mobile app. For example, if I were to hit this plus sign, I can add properties on my mobile app. If I swipe right, or if I select the 3 orange lines in the upper left-hand corner, here's my navigation menu. Now, of course, maybe you don't want your technicians to view all of these options. You just want them to do a couple of things on the mobile app. We can easily set that up for you where they are restricted of what they can view. But for example, if I go into my work orders, I have a bunch of different filtering options. If I want to see all work orders that are scheduled for today or tomorrow, I can do that. I can do geolocating. So if you trust your technicians to do the work themselves and you don't have to schedule them out, what you could do is you could keep them with the status of new, and then when your technician clocks in, he could say, I want all new work orders that are within 5 miles of me. And then they'll be able to pull those work orders and start working. But the main thing I want to point out with this, again, if I hit the plus sign, I can create a work order right here on the spot. And I can even schedule a work order to my in-house maintenance team or to an outside vendor like a contractor, all within our mobile app. So if you find you're on the go a lot, if you don't have time to go into the office to take care of some things, depending on the size of your company, this may be a really great thing for you to use as well. So it's not just for maintenance technicians. And then we'll talk about inspections in just a moment. We also have tasks if you want to associate tasks with the work order or just something additional they have to do in their workday. You can assign them that. I can see there's estimates and then additional information, time clock history. If they need to request a time clock change, they can easily do that using our system. Something I wanted to quickly point out is that we have chat with support. So my coworker Sean and I, we're here for our support for even the technicians in the field. So if they're having difficulty of trying to do something, maybe the status isn't changing because they didn't do something correctly. They can reach out to us directly, so that avoids communication to the office. That avoids them trying to call or email or the next day saying, "Oh, I don't know what happened. I couldn't do it, so I stopped using it." So that eliminates all of that for you because they can just chat with us directly, and we're very good at response time. So typically, technicians can get their problem resolved in, say, 5-10 minutes. But going back to actually the Today tab, I'm going to go into my work order that I have scheduled to replace the window. And right now the status is scheduled, but I'm going to change my status now to travel time. So here's where we start evaluating. Okay, they clocked in at 1:23 p.m. and then they didn't start working on a work order until 1:26 p.m. So there's that 3-minute gap where they were clocked in but not at a property yet. And what we do with those different statuses that you saw is we start evaluating how much time they spent traveling, how much time they spent working, how much time they spent getting parts. So I'm just going to kind of delay to keep travel time a little longer so we see all that information. But I can see the access method as tenant present. I have Jan's information, and then I have the details as well as Jan's phone number where I can quickly call if needed. I have the description and my tasks. And if I were to tap this task, I can have more information if needed. And then I toggle over when I say the task is done. And so this is being updated in real time as well for our real time feed. So then you know when your technicians are working, when they're traveling, etc. Now, I want to quickly try to pretend to jump the gun and say, okay, I'm working, but yeah, I'm done with this work order. If I hit work order finished, aha, but you can't because not all the tasks are completed. So again, this is a really great way to have accountability and satisfaction for everyone. If your technician didn't change the light bulb in the hallway, even though not only was it in the work order, he had to toggle over saying he did the work, then it shows that you need to have a conversation with your technician. When I scroll back up, I can add any notes. And so I'm going to go ahead and maybe add a note about the task that I replaced the light bulb. All right, so I'm going to add that note. And so I can see when the note was added, the date, time, and who added the note. So this is a great way for you to communicate with them as well about additional things for this particular work order. If I see that, okay, Monica actually said, I need to make sure I do this as well. Okay, perfect. I'll make sure that I know that. Here's where you can take those photos. You'd make sure to choose your category if it's a before or after damage photo. You can either take a photo using the camera or select photos if you've already taken those photos. Certainly, then you can just select them and then upload them into PM Toolbelt. So I'm going to scroll down and hit save. And so this is going to be updated in real time. So what we're going to see is in the parentheses next to photos, that number is slowly increasing as they're being updated into PM Toolbelt. So now we're at the property. Let's say he needs to make a quick stop at Home Depot for something. He's going to change his status now to getting parts. And again, now we're tracking how long did he spend getting parts? Did he spend an hour and a half at Home Depot? What on earth was he doing at Home Depot that would take him that long just to get one supply? And so now my status, as I said, is getting parts. I'll go ahead and add that material, and I'll add that receipt. You can do a price book item, which is essentially inventory tracking. It's a great way to preset your rates. For example, a gallon of paint, you may pay $20, but you always charge the owner $35 for that gallon of paint. You can set that up as a price book item. Otherwise, I'm going to quickly go through this and say what store I went to, how I paid for this, what card I used, how much money I spent, and let's say he had to buy a new window. So now you can see there's a scan receipt button. The scan receipt is essentially taking a photo. And then what you can do in our system is you can pull a material report, say quarterly or monthly, to find out how much money you're spending on materials. Now, if you're not already doing that, I highly recommend you do that with your company. You would be very surprised to find out what you are spending on materials alone. I mean, even something simple as buying paper towels, you'd be surprised at how often your technicians may be purchasing that supply. So now I can say I have one material, I have 3 photos, I have 1 note. For consistency's sake, I'm just going to go ahead and say I'm back to working so everyone can see what the typical workflow would be for a technician. Now, another status that everyone should have seen is pause working. Pause working would be where we stop tracking how much time is spent on the work order itself. And it's typically because there's an emergency worker that came through, maybe they're going on their lunch break, but we only allow them to physically work on one work order at a time so we can calculate that important information for you. So instead, I'm going to go ahead and say work order is finished. We always ask for a resolution note. It's just another way to get that satisfaction for the tenants and for the owners and for yourselves to know what work was actually done. So I'll just say I replaced with a brand new window. Then we ask for that after photo. This is a company setting if you want to require the after photo, or if you find the technicians don't need to take that after photo, that's fine. You can see you can add signatures as well. If I were to select this button, I'll see that follow-up is or is not required. Now I can finish that work. So now the status is being updated. All that communication is being sent out that the work order was completed. So then my current tab is now empty of work orders, and I go back to my Today tab to continue doing other work. So let me quickly move this screen away for a moment and show you what this looks like in PM Toolbelt then. So when I go into the work order itself, I'm going to see lots of different things that were added. I can see the status has changed to completed. I have my financial section, which broke down how much time I spent on materials and labor. I can see the tasks were checked off, knowing that they were done. I can see the material was added, and I can even view that receipt. And here's my beautiful history log. I see all the communication. I see those technician logs. Here's that GPS location, knowing exactly where he was at when he said he was traveling. And then when the work order was completed, we let everybody know that the work was done. And let me see, Jan Anderson is the tenant. So we thank her for doing the work. And we say, we would love to hear your thoughts on the work performed. Please click the button to leave a review. So that's that survey right there that we automatically sent out just because the technician said he completed the work. When I scroll down more, I have those photos that automatically attach too. Now I just want to quickly point out when I invoice, the technician's resolution note populated and his time spent on the work order populated. So if I want to change this, say 2 hours, I can see how much I pay him at the cost, and you can preset the rates in our system. So I know with this technician, I always charge the owner $35. And then that material automatically added, and I have a material markup of 20%. So that was automatically marked up in the system as well. That's essentially our maintenance. I do want to point out one quick report. Hopefully everyone can bear with me for a moment. We have this vendor work daily report. It's one of my favorite features. And what you can do is you can find out what your technicians are doing with their time again. So if I want to view what Itigo did yesterday, I can pull that information. So I can see he spent 2 hours working, but he spent about 5.5 hours clocked in. So we're giving them an efficiency rating of only 37% because he wasn't using his time wisely. I can see how much time he spent working versus traveling versus getting parts and unbilled. Then I have a track of all his logs. Now, Itigo only worked on one work order yesterday, and we can see he was traveling for 17 minutes. He worked for an hour. He was getting parts for 22 minutes. And I can see what materials he bought yesterday. This is technically for new pipes for $55. So this is a really great way for you to know what your technicians are doing with their time, which might feel like micromanagement to them, which realistically, that's everybody, right? Like my boss is knowing exactly what I'm doing with the computer. If I'm spending 2 hours on Facebook every day, he's going to know. And it should be the same thing for anybody else. It's also a way for accountability. If technicians are saying something takes them 5 hours and you thought it would only take an hour, this is a really great way for them to communicate with you to explain why this specific work order took much longer than necessary. So I'm going to move on now from maintenance to work orders. So again, if you have any questions, definitely use that Q&A feature so you can ask Sean, and then he'll be able to answer them in real time if you have additional questions about maintenance, either with your internal guys or for external vendors like contractors. Moving on to inspections. Inspections has a similar setup. Inspections has a similar setup to work orders. And so what you can do is you can filter out, and then we can see the different statuses that there's going on with the work order, or excuse me, with inspection. And if I were to create an inspection, it looks exactly like a work order. The only difference is that you mention the type, and then you choose the inspection template. So I do want to briefly mention inspection templates. We have this really great feature. It's called dynamic templates. I love it so much. Basically, what you do is you say for the property how many bedrooms and bathrooms there are. And when you use that dynamic template, instead of having a template for 5-bedroom, 2-bath, 5-bedroom, 3-bath, 5-bedroom, 4-bath, you can just use that template, and then we'll populate all those bedrooms and bathrooms for you to really reduce how many templates you need. And then you'll see that's the same type of filters for inspections as it is for work orders. I can see that I have several that are currently in progress. So if I were to click on inspection 443, I have similar layout to work orders, but the difference is when I scroll down, here is the inspection answers. I can see there was a damage estimate that I might need to create a work order for. We have condition questions. We have star ratings. You can do comments. You can add photos. You can take videos. And we have all those different bedrooms, bathrooms, rooms, etc. And I'll make sure to show you what this looks like on our mobile app in just a moment. The last thing I want to point out is that you can always email or download this inspection, but the main thing is you can compare inspections. So what you can do is you can compare, say, a move in versus a move out, and then you'll view them side by side to see what's going on. There's two types of comparisons you can do. You can just do a general side by side and you can see everything, or you can pull a report that only shows the differences for all of the work order, or excuse me, for all the inspection. Because if it's the same response that it was a year ago, realistically, do you really need to know about it? If that's the case, go ahead and say show only differences. So I'm going to show you our mobile app with our inspections, but we are getting towards the end of the webinar, and I want to make sure I launch my poll. So I'm going to launch that right now. It's just a couple of questions. I'd really appreciate if everyone could answer those questions while I show you what inspection looks like on the mobile app before I forget and give everyone an opportunity for that. Okay. So back to our mobile app. I'm going to go ahead and go into one of my inspections. And right now I'm going to change that filter so I can view my work inspections. So if I go into the inspection, I'm just going to quickly change my status so I can go into it. All right, so here's an inspection. It's going to look very similar to a work order on the mobile app. You'll see that there's a due date, there's the type as a move-in, and what template you are using. And then we have the property information, the access method. So here we have the inspection. For example, if I go into kitchen for the oven, we have this thing called conditional questions at the very top. You'll see good, bad, dirty, or broken. If I hit good or bad, nothing happens. But if I hit dirty or broken, here's where we ask for that estimate of repair, where then you can then create the work order. You can see you can add notes, you can take photos, and you can take as many photos as you want. We have some current customers that take hundreds of photos for their inspections. You can add videos to the inspection as well. And then you would go ahead and go throughout the entire inspection for this particular room in the kitchen. You can navigate at the very top by hitting those tabs of bedroom 1, bedroom 2, or you can navigate back in the home page if it's too confusing to navigate that way. One of the best things about our inspections is it's really easy to modify anything. So what that means, if I were to press the 3 orange lines, I can change the room name, I can duplicate it, I can add a new section. When I go to the very top of the inspection and I hit that pencil and paper icon, I can add another room. I can email out this inspection. I can create another inspection, and I can pull that comparison report right there for you on the mobile app. And that's essentially our inspections. I think it's very easy and straightforward, as is the rest of our software. A quick feature update that I want to make sure that I address is that for our inspections, we're going to add a piece where you can have a drop-down menu of word responses. So for example, if you're constantly typing about wine stains, cigarette burns, water damage, etc., you could use then our new feature to have a drop-down menu of word responses, so then you can just select them and add them to the inspection itself. And that's something that we're currently working on that should be coming out in the upcoming weeks that I'm very excited about. So that's essentially the end of our webinar. Thanks everyone for joining me today. I know there's a couple of questions left over that Sean's answering right now. And so you can stick around, to wait to hear from those answers. And then make sure to answer the poll if you haven't yet answered that. And essentially what we'll do then, if you have additional questions, you can always reach out to me. Let me pull up the chat icon. Let me try to find that real quick. Chat. So if you view your chat, I'm going to provide my contact information, my name, etc. So again, my name is Samantha Muscari. I'm the corporate trainer here at PM Toolbelt. My email is samantha@pmtoolbelt.com. My phone number is 651-300-5429. If you guys are a fan of learning more about our software but maybe don't want to reach out directly, I highly recommend you go to help.pmtoolbelt.com. And I'll also put that in the chat icon as well. help.pmtoolbelt.com. Here's where you can find those additional information as well about our maintenance and inspection software. They have videos, they have documents. There's about 80 or so documents and videos there. So I just want to thank everyone for the time that you spent here today to learn more about our maintenance and inspection software. If you haven't yet answered that poll, please answer it now so I can get that feedback from everyone. And then we'll make sure to answer any additional questions that people have for the Q&A. If you haven't yet asked those, please ask them now. Otherwise, everyone enjoy your Friday and have a great weekend. Thanks so much.